And now, the moment absolutely no one was waiting for. The history of the 401k. Ah, yes, the 401k. Who exactly is she? The 401k is a relatively new invention, one that is still deeply confusing to most people. To me, it's kind of like an air fryer. It's like, what the actual fuck is going on in there? Well, a 401k is something that we use to invest for retirement. And unfortunately, the whole system is way more complicated than it needs to be. In fact, even the guy who invented the 401k thinks that they suck, but they're still super important to understand. So buckle up, buttheads, because knowledge is power, and today we are doing the history of the 401k, or as I like to call it, the 401 okay, but why? Hi all, I'm Amanda, you may know me as the Dumpster Doggy, and welcome to my limited YouTube series, A Brief History of Getting This Bread, where I give complicated financial topics clarity through historical context. So before we dive into the history, just briefly, what is a 401k? So you save, we say contribute to it, and you invest within it for retirement. Let me put it this way. Do you remember Caboodles from like 6th grade? That teal and pink double-decker warehouse for all your most cherished belongings? Well, the 401k is kind of like that. Here's what I mean. A 401k is just a place where you keep your treasures. You can think of it like a fancy storage unit. So your white OPI nail polishes, your miniature novelty eraser collection, those are your treasures. You can think of those as your investments. Except instead of storing your Smackers lip balm and Lisa Frank stickers, your 401k holds stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, even cash. Those are your investments. And by the way, it's the same exact idea with a Roth IRA and with other retirement accounts. A Roth IRA, a 401k is an account that holds investments. A 401k is not itself an investment. It's your caboodles. Okay, so you might be thinking, what about just like a regular investing account? We sometimes call it a brokerage account. You can hold investments in one of those. You could even invest for retirement in one of those. So I'm looking at you, 401k. Spill it, you mysterious bitch. What makes you different? What makes you so special? Is it the way that she walks? No, it's taxation. It's just taxation. You get a tax benefit for investing within a 401k or really within any American retirement account, as opposed to when you invest within a regular brokerage account, a non-retirement brokerage account. Okay, so now the history. Let's start with a time before the 401k. It's like the 50s. I wasn't there, but I imagine a lot of chrome and pastel and people eating things suspended in Jell-O. I'm pretty sure that they were putting like a lot of meat in Jell-O back then. So back in these days, there are a couple of ways to plan for retirement. First, and this is a true classic from the annals of history, you work until you die. Or if you're lucky, you have a retirement funded from a variety of sources. So check out what I like to call Grandpappy's three-legged stool of retirement. So at this time, many companies offered pension plans for their employees. People had their own personal savings, and Social Security, which is the government's pension plan, was on a relative basis more robust. And from these three sources, a retired person could merrily live out their golden years until that moment when all that Jell-O meat finally catches up to you. Okay, so next, let's jump to 1978, a year of much experimentation. Just look at this People magazine cover. Elton John decides he's a lumberjack. Celebrities are dabbling in the devil's dandruff. And somewhere, in some cubicle, an accountant named Ted Benna is doing some sniffing around himself and discovers a new line. That is, he's sniffing around some new tax code and discovers line 401k. Now, this Ted B is not to be confused with the other 1970s Ted B, Ted Bundy. Our precious Ted B didn't murder any people. He only kind of murdered the pension plan. So anyway, our guy comes across this unused piece of tax code, literally line 401k, and he dusts it off like it's a rabbit toy after a disappointing hinge date. So this line 401k, it essentially is allowing savers to stash away some extra dollars, some extra cash, as long as they're earmarked for retirement into one of these new special accounts. And they just decided to name the account a 401k. And if you did so, you would get a tax benefit. And so for a minute there, everyone just kind of ignored it. Maybe branding it as a salary reduction plan didn't exactly help. But ultimately, Ted got his own company to adopt a 401k program for all of its employees, and it really just kind of spread like wildfire from there. So over the course of the next few decades, companies and employers really shifted away from offering pension plans and instead started offering 401ks and similar programs as the only or the primary way to save and invest for retirement. Here's the thing though. No one, not even Ted, thought that the 401k should be the only way that we save for retirement. But instead, a 401k was meant to be a supplement to pension plans. Think of it this way. A 401k was supposed to be more of like a concealer, like help with some extra coverage, not designed to be used across the whole face, making you look like a creepy human filter. So here we are without pensions and with Social Security under some duress, and we are left with this one-legged stool. Our 401ks are our personal savings. And what do you do with a one-legged stool, right? Like that's not used for sitting. That's a shitty art piece. I guess I have to sell it on Etsy. Coming to an excruciatingly boring 8-part true crime podcast near you. Did Ted Bennett and the 401k actually go all Ted Bundy on the pension? First of all, let's leave our sweet teddy bear Bennett out of this. He seems like a nice guy. And at best, the 401k was a contributing factor. There are several reasons that we've seen pensions go away. Blaming it all on the 401k would be like blaming the divorce on just one of Tiger's mistresses. Okay, so at risk of boring you into a deep, deep coma, it actually had a lot to do with some past legislation at the time that actually made it really hard for companies to appropriately fund their plans. And then there are other factors like people living longer than previously expected. These big plans required very expensive management. So basically, these huge Mondo pension plans became a bit of a statistical clusterfuck and were very difficult for employers, companies to maintain. So employers would be all like, wow, okay, so that was way too hard. We don't really feel like doing this anymore. So guess what, pal? It's on you now. Here you go. Have fun with that. And so unfortunately, what we've seen is that often when people are required to save for their own retirement, they don't. And for a lot of really valid reasons. Like they don't have a bunch of extra money laying around for some potential reality 50 years from now, or they simply don't even know that they're supposed to. Now, do I wish that companies took more responsibility for their employees, prioritizing the people that work for the company instead of profits for shareholders? Yeah, I do. But this is the system that we've got, so we have to make the most of it. So first, some companies do offer what is called a match, where they'll put money into your 401k if you put money into your 401k. And so make sure to figure out what your match program is and take full advantage. Oh, and by the way, the match is different from the max, which is how much the IRS allows you to put into one of these accounts in any one given year, because there are limits to the IRS's generosity. So for example, in 2022, you can put up to $20,500 into a 401k, and your match from your company does not count in your overall max. Don't have a match program? It's okay. It's probably still worth it to use your retirement account because of tax benefits. And also nowadays, there are many versions of workplace retirement accounts. So we know the 401k, but there's also the 403b, the 457b, the TSB, simple IRA. And then there are accounts that you can open if you don't have one through work, like a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And if you're self-employed, you can do a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. Remember earlier when I mentioned that the whole system is way too complicated? Each of these accounts that I just listed are at their core just fancy bank accounts. They are just caboodles. They are the Jell-O, and the investments are the hot dogs inside the Jell-O. So again, that means that the money inside of these retirement accounts needs to be invested. Please understand how it's invested. And so what is the moral of our historical story? It's all up to us. Right? Like now you are doing all the work, not your company. The saving, the investing, the figuring out how to pay yourself in retirement, it's all on you. 401ks are basically a piece of IKEA furniture. Once they realized that they could hand you a shitty instruction manual and let you figure it out because it's cheaper for them, they jumped on it. But you still got to do it, and you still got to build. And if that sounds totally daunting, I'd love to have you in my invested development course. We take you step by step through the process of opening an account, understanding, researching, and buying investments. And so I'd love to have you join me, and I'll link below. If you enjoyed learning about the history of how we grow our dough, obtain that grain, increase that yeast, feast on that yeast, then hit the subscribe button for more.